It's a pleasure, and always a pleasure and an honor. It's a big hand for Mr. James Polk, Dr. Polk. And the gentleman on the drums here, Mr. Dexter Walker. And the man here on the contrabass here, Michael Stevens, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. It's a pleasure. We thank you very much. We'd like to remind you that Mr. Polk and I, we have CDs on sale outside, and we'll be happy to autograph them for you. In case some of you want to take some of this music home with you, we'll be happy to autograph it. Thank you, and until next time, we wish you peace, love, and happiness.
Mr. David Fathead Newman, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I invite you to take your seats, please. We welcome you to this evening's event, where you will have an opportunity to hear from our Chief of Police finalist. My name is Olga Campos, and I would like to thank everybody for joining us. Whether you are joining our meeting here with us in person or tuning in from one of our other platforms. Tonight, we are excited to introduce to you the finalists for the Chief of Police. We'd like to begin the evening hearing from Assistant City Manager Ray Ariano as he walks us through the recruitment process. Ray?
Thank you, Olga. And good evening, everybody. Welcome to all of you, both present here and joining us in other ways. Tonight's community session and your feedback is critical to informing me and the city manager who should be our next police chief. We'd like to take a moment to introduce again with us this evening City Manager Spencer Cronk, as well as Council Member Mackenzie Kelly from Council District 6 over there in the back. Thank you for joining us. The recruitment process has been a thorough search that has brought us the best candidates who are aligned with our community values and are committed to equity and engagement, along with other characteristics that you helped us identify. Let me briefly describe the recruitment process that brings us here today. We engaged the search firm Ralph Anderson and Associates, who advertised the Chief of Police position and received a total of 46 applicants for the job. After careful consideration, the initial pool was narrowed down to 7 candidates. In July, those candidates interviewed with panels that included community stakeholders, law enforcement partners, and City of Austin executives. From those panels, 3 candidates emerged into the finalists you will be meeting this evening. Those candidates are Joseph Chacon, Interim Police Chief, Austin Police Department; Avery Moore, Assistant Chief, Dallas Police Department; and Emada Tingirides, Deputy Chief, Los Angeles Police Department. Following these meetings, the city manager and I will carefully assess who should be Austin's next police chief and be presented to the city council for confirmation. Whoever is selected will begin their duties during a period of intense change for the Austin Police Department. Ultimately, we believe that the new chief of police can help APD and the city adapt, emerge from reimagining public safety in a manner that meets our strategic safety outcome of being safe in our home, at work, and in our community. I would like to thank you for taking this time to participate in this event, and I would like to thank our candidates who I know are keen to introduce themselves and answer your question to help us get to know them better. And with that, I'll hand it back to Olga that gets things started.
Thank you, Ray. I'd like to take this time to make a couple of announcements about tonight's format. First of all, para los que hablan español y si preferían oír lo que estamos diciendo en español, we have an interpreter, and that was my bilingual effort here. It's not me. So wave your hand. There are electronic devices que pueden usar para oír en español lo que estamos diciendo. Thank you very much for those services back there. As we get started, I would also like to explain the format that we will be following this evening. First and foremost, it's important for you all to know that this is all based on you, your values, your thoughts, your comments, your questions. We ask everyone to listen carefully to the answers that are delivered here by our finalists and to join us in reviewing the interaction. To do so, please visit speakupaustin.org/yournextpolicechief. We ask that you share your thoughts about each of the candidates, their strengths, their areas of concerns, and any observations that you might have. Again, your feedback is extremely important. Each candidate will be joining us for 20 minutes, and the order was selected in advance. They will respond to questions that allow them to introduce themselves to you, to the public, and tell us why they're interested in serving our Austin community and leading our police department. Followed by that, we have a series of questions that I'll be asking. A couple of the questions have been put together by the consultant firm, Ralph Anderson and Associates, and our Human Resources Department. The remaining questions that will be asked will be from you, our community. I would like to note that the questions being asked may not be in exactly the words that you submitted, but they have been summarized to make the most of our time that we have. So, let us welcome our first candidate. Please join me. Let me make sure I have the name correct. Our Assistant Chief of the Dallas Police Department, Avery Moore. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to visit with you for a few moments backstage. Glad you were able to make it in town and that you have been briefed on our format.
Yes, ma'am.
So let's begin.
Yes, ma'am.
If you would please share with us your professional background and experience, highlighting the points that would help you be successful as the next chief of police, as well as tell us why you would like to serve in this position.
So first of all, I'd like to say good evening, Austin, and thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. I'm extremely humbled by this opportunity, and it is just that for me, an awesome, awesome opportunity. So a little bit about Avery Moore. This is my 31st year in law enforcement. I'm not a job hopper. I've been with Dallas my entire career, had the opportunity to work in every facet of policing, from patrol, mounted, narcotics, you name it, I've worked there or supervised over it. So I have an extensive background. I've been groomed and developed, and I have a proven track record in the things that you said you needed. Reduction in crime, I've done it, been successful at it. Building community trust and relationships, I've done it, been successful at it. And I'm proud to say that I'm willing and able to come here and do it here in Austin. I believe my steps are ordered by the Lord, and He's ordered me to be here today and to be your next chief. So again, thank you very much for this opportunity, and I say thank you again.
Thank you. All right. Austin's Reimagining Public Safety Initiative will be the centerpiece for the next chief's tenure. What are your thoughts, Avery, about our Reimagining Public Safety Initiative overall, and what will your approach be to make it successful? And please share an example, if you could, of a significant effort you led to help us see your ability to take charge and to bring about change.
So thank you for that question. You know, when I think about just the concept of reimagining policing, what an awesome concept. I believe that policing has a responsibility to always evolve, to always get better, to always strive where you see that you have deficiencies to make them positives. So I look forward to it. You know, it's not a bad word. It's not a bad concept. We just have to come together, all three legs of what 21st century says is a stool, local government, police, and the community working together as a team and to make Austin the best city, the safest city in America. And I believe we can do that. We can't run away from recommendations. We need to have a table that we all come to sit at. I'm the type of chief, I'll bring the table to you. We'll sit down, we'll talk, we'll go over your recommendations, we'll see what we can do. I'll be straight up honest with you. If I don't think it's a good idea, I'll say, I don't think that's something that we should do. We can have argument about it, we can have discussion about it, but we will leave that table with a definite course of direction. So I welcome reimagining policing. I think it's well over needed. I just think that it's going to take an entire team, that's the entire city, literally working together, everybody doing their job, everybody supporting. The goal is to have the safest city in America.
Do you have an example of an effort that you have helped to lead in the past that will help us see your ability to affect change, as you mentioned?
Yes, ma'am. So one of the things that we did, I had the opportunity to work with Chief Renee Hall on, is we banned the chokehold. We hadn't taught it since 2004, but it never was written on paper, so we banned the chokehold. Another thing that I did is I banned narcotics running no-narc warrants. Felt like they weren't really prepared for it, they weren't trained for it, and it was just too dangerous, not only for the officers, as well as for the citizens. So those are two things that I did. Furthermore, after the protest that we had this year, I had it set up to where the entire command staff was trained, as well as the officers trained, in how that we should respond properly to peaceful protest. So those are three things that I did that I'm extremely proud of. There's some other things that I've done, but those are the three top three. So thank you.
Great. Chief Moore, across the nation and across Austin, people are taking a critical look at systematic racism in policing. What have you done in the past, and you did mention certainly some changes there, but in the past to address this issue in particular, and what will your approach be if selected as Austin's new chief of police?
So, you know, that's a really touchy, sensitive kind of subject for me. And the reason being is I've been on both sides. So I'm going to share a story with you. About 3 months ago, I was racially profiled. I was leaving the gym, and I came to a red light, and the distance between the parking lot of the gym and the red light is literally about 50 feet. So as I'm making a right-hand turn, officer turns his lights on. Well, I know I didn't do anything wrong because I'm pouring down sweat, and again, I hadn't gone far enough to violate the law. So I make the right-hand turn, I pull over to the left, roll the window down, stick my hands out, and I'm sitting there really kind of almost panicking, saying, what did I do wrong? Because I couldn't figure it out. So then I said, you know, I don't think I did anything wrong, and I'm in my off-duty car, so I turn my red lights on. So when I do that, the officer sticks his hand out, and he gives me the thumbs up. So I pull off, but I'm still disturbed because I know I didn't do anything wrong. So I make a left-hand turn, and I'm on the service road, and I pull over so the officer can come up, and I can ask him, hey, what'd you stop me for? Well, he sees what I'm doing, so he kind of cold trails me, and he purposely stays back so I can't confront him. So what I did is I called that agency, and I complained, because I don't think he had a reason to stop me, and that's wrong. It's a violation of my rights. I was a citizen, and I have a right to know why you're stopping me. So that's how I did that. Systemic racism is not something you run away from. You have to be willing to have tough discussions about it. You can't allow your emotions to get in the middle of it, because people respond out of emotion, and we as officers, we do too, and that can lead you down the wrong path. We're grown people. We have to act that way. We have to be willing to not just have pleasant conversations, but we got to be willing to take on those topics that may be unpleasant. And racism, unfortunately, is real. The story I just shared with you is just one of many that I could share in my life and in my career. I've been stopped. I've seen people abuse, some of them my family members. Part of the reason I became a police officer was because my uncle was arrested and he was beaten. And I saw that, and I made a promise that I would make a mark that couldn't be erased. And I'm proud to say that I've done that, and I want to continue to do that here in Austin.
Thank you. One last question. This is your chance to inspire us. What is your vision for policing in Austin, and how are you going to get us there?
So my vision for Austin is really kind of simple. You know, Austin has a very good police department, and if you would, just look around at the officers here and just give them a round of applause, if you would. And I do that. I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't. Officers put it on the line each and every day. And sometimes I think it's forgotten that we are people. I mentioned emotion a minute ago. We have emotion. And sometimes we act out of that emotion, and it can lead us down the wrong path. But Austin's a good police department. I want us to be great. Ultimate goal is that we be the greatest. I believe that somebody has to be the greatest police department in the country. Why not us? I believe we can. I think that we can work together, local government, community, police department, and that's what we can accomplish. Everybody wants the same goal. I believe it was the assistant managers said they want to be safe in their work, play, and just be able to come to Austin and feel like this is a good surrounding, I'm safe, I can play and do whatever I want to do and go home safely. That's the goal, safety. And I know that we can do that together. So that's what I bring here. I'm excited. I have passion for policing. That's why I've been doing it for so long. I believe that it's a calling from God for officers to do it. And those that have answered the call, that's what we're going to do. We're going to be the best, not one of the best police department in the country. So that's my goal.
Thank you, sir. And if you'll stand by, let me see how much time we have left. We have 5 minutes? Okay, great. Well, we're going to go to one of those additional questions that we talked about. These are from the community. What would you do to ensure the APD frontline staff reflects the demographic makeup of our community, in particular, our growing Asian and Hispanic demographics?
So I think it's very important that you are a microcosm of the communities that you represent. I've had the pleasure to help with recruiting, and I know that the best way to do it from a leadership perspective is to be hands-on. You have to have the character of the police department that draws people to you. So if you go to whatever community that you need to go to recruit who you need to recruit, that's what we need to do. We'll do it as a team. We'll show them why we're the best. That's our character. We'll show them that you can come. It's a rewarding career. It's all about benevolence of people. You have to love people to be a police officer. That's really the prerequisite. And that's how you recruit. You know, there's money and all that stuff that obviously has to be comparable. But the bottom line is if you tell people that you want them and you give them value, they'll come and they'll serve. Because everybody inherently wants to serve the communities that they live in. So that's what we would do. Collectively go out as a team and recruit who we need to recruit.
Okay, You told me 5 now. Okay, all right. That was the wrap that I needed to get. Thank you so much. We want to be fair on the time that we are sharing with our finalists here. We will make all of our finalists available, though, after we wrap up. So thank you so much.
Thank you very
Pleasure.
much. Thank you.
As we bring up our next finalist, I will take a moment to let you all know that at the conclusion, there will be an opportunity for those who are here in person to visit with our 3 finalists. We only ask that you keep your mask on and maintain those social distances, but there will be a little bit of time at the end for that, so stay tuned. And now approaching our stage is our second finalist. Please join me in welcoming the the Deputy Chief of Los Angeles Police Department, Emada Tingirides. Get a fist bump. Welcome. So I believe the format has been explained to you backstage.
Yes.
And we're going to start with our first question. We have about 20 minutes. We do have a timekeeper who's kind of waving me down, so I'll try to keep us both on track here. All right, our first question to you. Please share with us your professional background and experience, highlighting the points that would help you to be successful as the next Chief of Police in Austin, and tell us why you want to serve in this position.
Good evening. First, I'd like to acknowledge that I understand the importance of this next selection for the Austin Police Chief position. And my entire 26 years of serving in law enforcement has been exactly what the city of Austin is looking for. I have spent my career working in communities that are some of the most underserved, low socioeconomic, and violent communities in the city of Los Angeles. And I was able to make change in those communities by first building trust and relationships. When I looked at the qualifications and what you all asked for in a police chief was someone that was empathetic, understanding what racism is, has the ability to communicate and coordinate, and also understand de-escalation and reverence for human life. My entire career has been built on those foundations. Right now in this country, with the tragic killing of George Floyd and the reimagining of policing across this country, you all are asking for something that I have been doing for decades. I have the experience. I have the experience to work with the community, with our city partners, with our schools, to listen and understand one another and make change in a way that's positive for the entire community of Austin.
Thank you. Well, you used our phrase, Austin's reimagining our public safety initiative, and it will be the centerpiece for the next chief's tenure. What are your thoughts about our reimagining public safety initiative overall, and what would your approach be to making it successful? And if you would, please share an example of a significant effort that you led to help us see your ability to bring about change.
Absolutely. I had the opportunity to listen to the recommendations from the Austin Reimagining Task Force, and it was really compelling to me to listen to all of the recommendations and ideas from the various work groups that have been working very closely with the city and the city manager, Spencer Cronk. And a lot of what was recommended is something that communities should have already. There were suggestions in there about reentry and having services for individuals that are coming out in prison so that they don't recidivate. There were suggestions in there about resources, having neighborhood hubs where individuals can come and seek resources or job training or financial help for their families or paying their rent. I completely stand behind reimagining public safety. And what I really think is important too is that I've talked to a lot of police officers from Austin, and they believe in it too. They accept the civilian oversight. They accept the fact that we do need to make change and look at ourselves and make critical decisions in the way that we train, especially as it relates to reverence for human life and de-escalation. And it's needed. It's needed across this country right now. Austin is at the forefront of this, and I'm looking forward to taking the knowledge and skills that I have had in reimagining over the past decade and bringing that here to this city as well.
How about an example of something that you've instituted?
Yes, so I had the pleasure to work alongside a civil rights attorney who had sued the Los Angeles Police Department multiple times for some of the practices and ways that we were policing in our communities. Her name is Connie Rice. And together with her, we created and implemented a program called the Community Safety Partnership Program. I'm currently the chief of that program. And that program is centered on what I call cultural policing, relationship-based policing. We place dedicated police officers in these communities to build trust, to listen to one another, to address some of the quality life issues. And what was so impactful about doing it this way was we went out, a nonprofit organization called Urban Peace went out into the community and they did community sentiment surveys. They asked the community, what type of police officer do you want to see? What is it that you want? What resources are lacking in your community? And when we went out and did those surveys, there was a blueprint that was created that our officers had. They knew the history, they understood the needs, and we were able to take that and implement it, working alongside the community to make change. And in doing so, 10 years later, we reduced violent crime across our community safety partnership sites by 35%. A recent study was done on the program by an outside entity that showed trust has been built, that crime had been reduced, but we also have a long way to go in ensuring that we continue and sustain those efforts.
Next question. Across the nation and across Austin, people are taking a critical look at systematic racism in policing. What have you done in the past to address this issue? You just spoke a little bit. And what will your approach be if selected as Austin's next police chief? And we're interested, of course, in both police interaction with the community as well as the internal aspects of this issue.
In order to have a successful relationship, we have to understand one another. And we have to understand each other's culture, how people feel, and take that to consideration as we go about communicating and working internally and externally out in the community. I talked a lot about culture, and at the root of some of the civil unrest, it was really built upon people feeling like they've been ignored. Systemic racism within organizations is such as our education system, our housing system, and then you have law enforcement working in some of these communities that are experiencing that. That temperament was the boiling point of the uprising and civil unrest in Watts in 1965. There was a traffic stop that was the catalyst, but the lack of resources in the schools and the jobs and the housing is really what angered the community. As a police chief, it's extremely important that my officers understand the temperament and what the community wants to see in their police officers. It's also important that they understand their community. When you talk about racism, institutional racism, that means everybody's bad, that it's institutionalized. I don't believe that the Austin Police Department is institutionalized with a bunch of police officers that are racist. What I do believe, if there's not an equal playing field and individuals don't feel like they have the same opportunities, like career development, putting together a robust, and as a police chief, I'm going to do this, put together a robust leadership program to bring officers in from day one and find out what they want to do in their career. How do we get them there? How do we do oral interview preparation? And that way there isn't a perception that there is bias or racism within the organization, but we're working together to give everybody that same opportunity.
Our last question to you at this point, if we have time, we'll go to one of the community ones. But this is your chance now to inspire us. What is your vision for policing in Austin, and how are you going to get us there?
I want to tell a little story. I started coming to Austin in 2017, and my daughter applied to UT. She did not get in, so she ended up at Texas Christian University. And then I was back again to see a film called Fallen, and it was based on officers that were killed in the line of duty, and a particular officer that was an Austin PD officer who was killed in, I believe it was Northwest, Walmart in Northwest Austin. And when I got a chance to sit in that theater and talk to some of the families and talk to some of the police officers, I was so inspired. And the community and city of Austin reminds me a lot of the community in Los Angeles. And I just felt compelled to continue coming back to this community. My husband retired after almost 40 years in law enforcement. We were going to buy property in 2018 here, and we're kicking ourselves now because the prices have definitely changed since the last time we looked. But this was a place we wanted to be home for us. So this opportunity came, and I prayed about it, and I knew that this was the right place for me to be. I want to be a chief of this city, and I want what you all want. We want a safe, clean environment, a positive quality of life, a place where our children can go to school and thrive, to build our community capacity so that people can become leaders in their own community, and to serve this city the way it deserves to be served.
My daughter went to TCU too.
Frogs.
All right. Do we have time for one quick question? Great. We want to ask you a question from the community. Tell us about your experience addressing individuals with mental health issues.
Mental health is such a complicated and important component of what law enforcement is up against. And I have had great experience in working alongside our mental health service providers in addressing those concerns. I want to tell this incident that happened. We have a young man that was autistic, and the family was so concerned about police officers responding to the residents because he would have the tendency to get violent. And so that resident address was placed in our special locations, and we introduced all of my officers to that family and to that individual so they would have a connection and know who he is. So if a radio call did come out at that location, we had this awareness, we had the ability to de-escalate and understand how we go about connecting with the family. We also, it is very important that we work alongside clinicians with law enforcement to respond to radio calls, to have an unarmed response. If this individual isn't posing a threat or a danger, he's not armed, let them be the first response to these incidents, with law enforcement standing back and waiting to come in and provide that assistance if need be. I think it is very important that we have access to those resources 24 hours, 7 days a week. If we're going to implement, I heard in some of the Reimagining Public Safety, the idea of implementing unarmed response. I have vast experience in working with intervention workers that are unarmed response that go out into the community. I support that. We need to have enough officers to work alongside of them to ensure that it's impactful and we have a positive result.
Great. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your answers to our questions.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, while we're waiting for our third and final candidate, that you can, of course, fill out the candidate feedback forms, which you can find, again, that address, speakupaustin.org/yournextpolicechief. So that's where your feedback will will also be reviewed, and your input is encouraged. Next candidate to join us now is our interim police chief, the Austin Police Department, Mr. Joseph Chacon.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to start by asking you to please share with us your professional background and experience, highlighting the points that would help you be successful in your role as the chief of police, the next chief, and tell us why you'd like to serve in this position.
Well, thank you very much, Olga. And my name's Joseph Chacon. I want to thank everyone that's here this evening and watching online for, just being here and taking part in this very important, really critical decision that the city has to make. You know, I've been a police officer for the last 29 years. I started in my city where I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas. And, I started there in 1992 with the El Paso Police Department and then moved here to Austin in 1998, and I've been here for the last 23 years. Over those almost 30 years with 2 police departments, there really is not a part of policing that I have not either worked directly in or overseen. I spent a good amount of time in investigations, certainly understand that part, but also spent time at every single rank in patrol. That is going to give me the basis that I need to be a well-rounded chief of police. You know, I also I speak Spanish. I think that it's important for the community to know that I do speak Spanish and can connect with our Spanish-speaking community to help build the trust that is going to be necessary for the police department. I've been the interim chief of police for the last 5 months. During that time, I've really been leading a culture of change in our department. I'm sure I'll have an opportunity with some of the questions that are going to be asked to provide some examples of what that looks like. But it really, just a couple of quick examples out at the training academy and what we're doing out there and how we have really revamped the way that we're training our police cadets, as well as with our employees, sworn and civilian in the department, in which I am instituting procedural justice at every level of the organization. It's just going to be critical for people to understand how we are changing the culture with the Austin Police Department. I've been leading the way in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I just appointed the very first Asian American assistant chief of police in the history of the Austin Police Department. And also, just the things that we're doing in our recruiting unit and our training reflect that we are valuing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then finally, I'll just, kind of round out these opening comments with, why do I want to be the chief of police? I have been living and serving in the Austin community for the last 23 years. I love this community, and I love this police department. And I think that as the chief of police, I have the best opportunity to affect the change, to build the trust between the community and the department. And I know that I have the knowledge, the skills, the ability, and the desire to lead this department now. I've been involved in the reimagining public safety efforts since inception, have really leaned into that effort, and will continue to do so in the future. Thank you for giving me an opportunity, and I'll look forward to the questions.
Well, and you've just jumped right on to the next question, which is about our Reimagining Public Safety Initiative. What are your thoughts about it, and what will be your approach that will make it successful? And if you would, please share an example of a significant effort that you've led to make that change.
Well, thank you. Like I said, I was there when we began the process over a year ago, have been tracking with the task force, have been having communication directly with task force members, our city council members. How are we going to make this successful? I think one of the best examples that I can give, and I mentioned it just a moment ago, is our training academy. We have completely reimagined the way that we are delivering training to our cadets, transitioning from a paramilitary kind of style of academy to one that is based on an adult learning environment. We have put in the community connect piece at the very beginning to really help our cadets understand why they're getting into this line of work, why it is that they've chosen this profession, and why it's so important that we build guardians, and kind of transition from that warrior mindset to a guardian mindset. Importantly, two of the courses that we have our cadets going through are groundwater analysis of racial inequities and systemic inequities. That is a course that all of our cadets go through from day one, and then I'm putting all the rest of our incumbents in the department through over a series of months, as well as the history of race and policing in Austin, so that they have an opportunity to understand the history of policing in this community and in this country, kind of the good and the bad. So those are the type of reimagining efforts and one of the best examples that I can give.
Okay. And on this next question, you began to touch on it. It is about the critical look at systemic racism that is happening across the nation and here in Austin, particularly in policing. What have you done in the past to address this issue? What will your approach be if you're selected as Austin's next chief of police? We're, of course, interested both in the police's interaction with the community as well as what happens internally within a department.
Yeah, thank you. I think that, over the last several years, we have put on a number of courses that have to do with racial inequities, identifying implicit bias, having officers understand what that is so that they can identify it and make sure that it doesn't affect the way that they deliver police services. The newest course that we have instituted and that I am leading right now is the groundwater analysis course that I'm talking about. This is a course that is pretty groundbreaking in that we're looking at systems, we're looking at whole institutions to see where have we unwittingly created bias in these systems that makes it tougher for communities of color and for communities that have been marginalized. They sit in round groups. We bring in sworn officers, civilians from the department, and we bring in community members, and we share stories. And this has led to a greater understanding, a greater depth of really engagement from our officers. The feedback that I'm getting is incredible. And like I said, we're doing that right from day one with our cadets, and they come through the academy and they go through this course. All of our leadership ranks have already been through it, and we are in the process now of getting every single rank through the course over the next several years. So that's just a great example that I can give for that.
This is your chance, Chief Chacon, to inspire us. What's your vision for policing in Austin, and how are you going to get us there?
My vision really is built around procedural justice. I have been, over the last 5 months, getting in front of as many officers as I can to talk about what procedural justice is, the fact that we're treating people with dignity and respect, the fact that when we go out and we have interactions, that we take our time, explain what we're doing, and to the greatest extent possible, give those that we're interacting with an opportunity to have voice in that encounter, that we display trustworthy motives and we deliver services in a fair and impartial way. But the way that I think that you actualize that vision is by building it internally first. So I have been doing a number of things in the department to make sure that that occurs. I reinstituted the Chief's Advisory Committee, a committee of both sworn and civilian members at all ranks that I meet with, myself and my executive staff meet with on a monthly basis, and they create the agenda, not me. I've created a SharePoint site where they can go anonymously to be able to submit suggestions or complaints about things that are going on in the department and how we can make things better. I think that if I treat my employees, they feel empowered, supported, trusted. If I build that internal procedural justice, that is going to translate externally in the way every interaction that they have with the community.
Now I'd like to turn to questions from the community. Do you believe that we need more police officers to ensure public safety? And what's your philosophy on determining the correct number of officers for our city?
Thanks for that question. I mean, this has been a big topic in our community for a while. And what I've been saying from the beginning is that we are an intelligence-led, evidence-based police department. We cannot arbitrarily say that, you know, this number is right or this number is right without having the data to back it up. And so, you know, I have been working with the Greater Austin Crime Commission, with our chief data officer, and we are looking at a model to develop, first of all, what are the metrics that are going to measure what it is that the police services that this community really wants delivered, and then knowing the metrics, how many officers do I need to have that outcome? When we do that, those two phases, which is a significant community survey as well as a machine learning model that is going to help us to drive, you know, what are the response times that we want for our officers? How many officers do I need to have this much community engagement time? That is what is going to tell us exactly how many officers that we need.
Okay. Let me see if we have time for one more question, or, okay. One briefly. Tell us about de-escalation training that you would require for all officers.
You know, de-escalation is really, we need to weave it into everything that we do. It's in our policy, it's in our training. The Police Executive Research Forum instituted the ICAT training, Integrating Communication Assessment and Tactics. We have been training that at the Austin Police Department for a few years now. We don't just teach it in the academy, we teach it during our in-service training every 2 years that officers go back to learn the tools that it takes to de-escalate situations, to remember that most of the time is on our side and that we can take time to de-escalate situations. And what we've really done is charged our supervisors with reviewing all of the incidents that are happening, putting it in policy that officers must de-escalate. And so that is what they're doing as they review every incident that we might have to use force, for instance. All of those are reviewed by the chain of command, and we look at it to make sure, was there an opportunity to de-escalate, and did they do it?
Thank you, Chief Chacon, for your time. And I think at this time we're going to pretty much wrap our program to allow you all who are here in attendance to visit individually with our 3 finalists. Again, we ask that you maintain your social distance and keep your masks on. In the meantime, for those of you who are joining us online, please, we hope that you have enjoyed the opportunity to hear our 3 finalists discuss some of these very important issues that are facing our city and our policing. We would ask, too, that you fill out the candidate feedback forms, which you can find, once again, visiting speakupaustin.org/yournextpolicechief, or call 311, or this number, 512-974-2000. All of the forms that you're turning in need to be submitted by 8 p.m. this Sunday, September 22nd. We will be back here tomorrow evening for another public forum. We invite all of you to attend and to tune in. We also ask that you be safe as you leave tonight. Stick around. We'll be allowing our 3 finalists to interact with you individually. Thank you.